Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. I'll call the June 20th, 2023 meeting of the White Bear Lake Conservation District Board to order. We have a quorum. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. And does anybody have any adjustments that they would like to make to tonight's agenda? Okay, would anybody like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. Next item on the agenda is approval of the previous board meeting minutes. And does anybody have any adjustments that they would like to suggest to the May 16th meeting minutes? Okay. Would someone like to make a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Well, that passes. Next item on the agenda, public comments. We reserve 15 minutes on our agenda each meeting for items that are not on the agenda. Would anybody like to take advantage of that 15 minutes? Okay, we'll move on. New business. Introduction of DNR Conservation Officer Matthew Pavola. Am I close? Pavola, thank you. And Alan, would you like to kick this off?
Sure, I can do that. Good evening, Chair and Board. Tonight here, as you can see in the back, is our only uniformed officer, which we don't normally have in our chambers. And as everyone knows, the DNR has been struggling to staff up. And of course, one of the first lakes in the metro to have problems was ours. And Matt will tell you about his patrol district, but he's our latest conservation officer issued to us by the DNR or issued to the area. So without further ado, I'll let Matt speak for himself. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks for inviting me. Thanks for having me. I'm Matt Pavola. As Alan said, I'm the local conservation officer. I do cover the southern half of Anoka County and the northern half of Ramsey County. So I do have quite a big area to cover, and we are state police, so we do cover the entire state. So I am out of my area frequently assisting with neighboring officers or doing other details. A little bit about myself. I grew up in Venice Heights, so I'm very familiar with this area. So it's nice to be able to be stationed here and work in an area where I know the lakes and trails, the woods, hunting areas. I went to school in Superior, Wisconsin, got my bachelor's degree in criminal justice. And then right after college, I worked at Hennepin County Sheriff's Office for 6 years. And then started with the DNR December of, was it 21, 22? So I've been with the DNR a little over a year. I've been in this station since the beginning of this year. That's just a little bit about myself. Like I said, I'm very familiar with this area, and it's something I'm passionate about growing up here. So.
Okay, well, welcome, and thanks for that introduction, and thanks for helping us out on the lake. Does anybody have any items that they would like to bring up at the moment?
Question.
Mark?
What, in your opinion, for our lake, what should we be looking forward in the future as maybe possible issues coming ahead that we haven't seen before, or like what are you guys looking for or help from us to help you with?
I guess some of the most common violations that I run into are registration violations with watercraft. There's a lot of new watercraft and kind of makeshift watercraft that's out there. A lot of people aren't aware that watercraft that's non-motorized, if it's longer than 10 feet, needs to be registered. Also, with new watercraft, there's a lot of people that seem to be waiting on registration or confused about registration numbers. They think sometimes the state is supposed to send them registration numbers. That's something I've been running into a lot with people that are waiting to put registration numbers on boats because they're not aware that they're supposed to handle that themselves. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Or do any water quality monitoring of any type for White Bear Lake?
I am not sure. That'd be a question for our fisheries department. Unfortunately, we have so many different divisions of the DNR, and I'm pretty much focused on the enforcement side. If there's, as far as like water quality or basically any public water complaints, or I deal with a lot of aquatic plant management complaints. I'm not involved in that stuff very often. It's mostly when there is a violation, then it's something that I address and get involved, but that's pretty much fisheries is taking care of all that.
Thank you.
Meredith?
Thank you very much for what you do. I wanted to mention there's a group of people on this lake that are promoting loon breeding. They have floating loon nests. I'm not sure if you've seen them out there. We get some complaints from them every year about people getting too close to the loon nests or harassing the loons.
Yeah, I guess I've heard complaints, or I've received complaints, people just stopping on the lake wanting to talk to me about it. I know most of the complaints I've got are people are getting too close to the loons in kayaks, stuff like that. As far as I know, there's really not a state law against getting too close to the animals. There are state laws against chasing or harassing animals in motor vehicles, boats, personal watercraft, stuff like that. There are separate laws for personal watercraft and any motorized boats. So we consider those motor vehicles and chasing or harassing wildlife. So that's something I could enforce if there's motorized vehicles chasing, harassing the loons or wildlife.
What about fishermen casting towards the nests?
There's really, as far as I know, there's not a state law that would cover that. Casting too close, it's kind of like people are casting close to somebody's dock. Something like that, I get complaints from people that people are fishing too close to their dock. They might snag my boat cover or something like that. It's kind of a risk fishermen take. If something happens, then it could turn into a violation if they injure the animal, or if they're snagging somebody's dock or anything like that, it could turn into a civil matter then.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Alan?
First of all, fun fact, one of my favorite DUI grabs was from a gentleman who decided after not doing so well fishing, got snagged by a conservation officer because he decided the better use of time would be chasing geese on White Bear with his boat. So that was the probable cause to pull him over, and he ended up being a little too full of Pepsi. But anyway, questions come up, and I think last month we even had one here about pollution discharge into the lake, oftentimes from motors and other vehicles. And so obviously you're not the pollution cop, but at what level would it come to, or what level would it have to go to before you'd actually cite someone for any sort of violation that you saw like that?
As far as like water or like, are you talking, I guess, oil discharge from a motor or something like that?
Fuel oil, that sort of thing.
I guess most of that stuff is going to be incidental. If it's something that I could prove that it's done purposely, then that could be a violation, but most of the time it's incidental.
So you wouldn't consider it an equipment violation unless it was really obvious?
Yep.
Okay.
How often are you on White Bear?
Honestly, I can't really answer that because I don't even know myself. So like I said, I cover pretty much the size of a county, and then I travel all around the state as it is. But White Bear is one of my busier lakes in the area, so I do spend quite a bit of time out there. I was just out on White Bear yesterday for about 7 hours on my boat. So it was a pretty busy day yesterday, hot, but the fishermen are usually out in the morning, and then I'm out chasing around the recreational people the rest of the day. So, yes, unfortunately I can't answer that because I don't even know. Sometimes that's the hardest decision of my day is what I'm going to do, what lake I'm going to go to. So,
That's a nice job.
I can't complain.
Can the public contact you directly with complaints?
Yeah, they can.
How do you do that?
We have on our website, the DNR website, there is under our map section, there is a conservation officer locator, and then it'll give my name, and it shows actually the area I work and cover. So it's kind of nice. They can, and there's a general number for the DNR. They can call in and say, I want to contact Conservation Officer Matt Pavla. And then our dispatch, we're dispatched through State Patrol. So sometimes they'll reach out to me on my radio or on my computer and ask me to call somebody. Or we have our DNR information line that just gives them my phone number most of the time, and they call me directly.
Do you have that number?
Do I have
The
my
number?
personal number? I could give it to any of you guys.
Maybe what would be a better idea is if we could get on the website, get a link, maybe specifically to White Bear Lake on the Finder. So, and I don't know if it works that way, but
Conservation Officer Locator, right?
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then that will give the number they can call to contact me. The reason that gives the general number for the most part is that we have conservation officers that are obviously have their certain areas that they cover. Kind of what that does is it narrows down to make sure people are getting in touch with their local conservation officer and not somebody that may be in another area.
Alan?
Darren's too shy to ask questions, so he asked me one, so I'm going to ask Matt. If a resident has a problem, obviously you can call 911, you can call the sheriff, or you can call you.
Yep.
So how would you kind of triage what the better choice would be for someone? What's a classic conservation officer complaint versus a classic 911, someone's out there being a maniac in the boat sort of complaint?
So what I tell people is if they think it's an emergency, call 911. If it's something that may be an active violation, let's say somebody is taking an overlimit of fish or they're using extra lines out on a lake, they can certainly contact 911, their non-emergency line, and then that gets dispatched to me if I'm working. Otherwise, they'll contact the nearest conservation officer, and they can handle that call. With any non-emergency stuff or anything that's not ongoing, they can also contact the DNR Information Center, and then they send me an email. So for something that may be just a complaint or something that's happened a long time ago and doesn't necessarily need a immediate response, that might be the best way to go, is contacting the DNR Information Center for a follow-up from a conservation officer in their area. But if it's an emergency, please call 911. And if I need to respond, they will get a hold of me because we are dispatched through State Patrol and the 911 service.
So 911 may send it to State Patrol or to the sheriff, depending on what the situation is.
Yep. And then if it's something specific that might need my assistance, that a city or county or State Patrol might not be able to deal with on their own or might need the expertise, they'll call me. And then, as I said, we are state police, so I do respond to any other emergencies if I'm close by, or basically back up or assist other local agencies as well.
Thanks.
Any additional questions? Okay, well, thanks again for making the time to come out and talk to us, and welcome to the lake, I guess.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it. Thanks, Al.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda, bylaw amendment regarding the audit frequency. Mike, do you want to take this?
Yes, this would be the second reading of the bylaw amendment to change the audit frequency from 3 years to 5 years. The bylaw change to read for the second time is proposed change to section 6-4 reads as follows. Audit. The director shall serve as an audit committee, and every 5 years the district shall engage in an outside agency firm to perform a full audit of the district's financials for accuracy, completeness, and adherence to standard accounting principles. The result of such audit shall be presented to the board, and once voted and accepted shall be transmitted to the individual lake cities. And Alan will tell us what happens next.
Don't you make a motion to approve?
Sorry, Mike, what did you need? I'm setting up for your group photo, so I've determined that we're going upstairs to do it, so I'm trying to relocate equipment and still be here, so I apologize. What can I help
So I
you
read
with?
it for the second time, and now do we just make a motion and
Yeah, just make a motion to
accept it?
adopt the reg and be done with it. Second reading, right?
okay, I make a motion that we adopt this change to the bylaws.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the change to the bylaws. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. Thank you, Mike. Lake use study, volunteers for scope of work collaboration.
I think I might have enough volunteers, but if anyone feels strongly, I'll take more. But I'll just review what we're going to do. The last Lake Use study was done in 2005. At the last meeting, we decided to include a new study in our 2024 budget. So we're hoping to get some estimates and bids in October. So we've pulled every study we've done in the last 25 years, which includes a variety of studies of things that were on the shore, ice studies, lake management studies, every major study we've done in the last 25 years. And so this small group is going to determine what's most important and relevant to include in the next study, the 2024 study. Is anyone feeling really strongly that they want to join us?
And I'll just say that Mark has
Mark,
agreed to.
yes.
Thank you, Mark. And also the LUC.
Alex.
Alex, yep, is also going to help. And I'll just add, the idea here is that we want a new lake study performed. Somehow we need to develop a scope of work so we can go out to professionals that do that work and ask them to quote. And so the goal of this small group is to review all of the past reports, identify what should be included in another, and develop a draft scope of work that they can bring to the board for review and approval. Okay. Any questions for Meredith? Okay. Thank you, Meredith. We'll move on. St. Germain signage. Mike.
The sign for St. Germain Bay, to identify St. Germain Bay, is back in play. We have a design. We have, potentially we have two landlords or two property owners that may be willing to have the sign put up. And we're kind of in the asking and waiting for a response stage. But if that happens, I'd like to actually request, I don't know what a sign costs to make, but maybe $200. What were your signs for?
Yeah, it was a few years ago. It depends on how big you want it to be.
Yeah, it'd be about
Because-
maybe 10 inches by 40 at the biggest.
40,
Yeah.
It would be on one or two posts,
Two
depending
posts,
on,
one side.
Yeah, because you want it to be readable for a car driving
Yeah.
at at the speed limit.
Right.
So it's got to be bigger. Yeah, I don't know how much a sign like
Okay.
that would be.
Well, I'm gonna
They're pretty
request,
reasonable if you got them from the DOT sign shop in Oakdale.
Yeah, I'm thinking $200 would be enough.
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion to request $200 to be used when we get permission from property owners to order a St. Germain Bay sign.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? And I'll start. I recall when we had signs made before that coming out of the DOT shop, they were surprisingly affordable.
Yeah.
And so the $200 might be okay, but would you entertain a friendly amendment to make that $500 so that we don't have to come back and ask for another $50 if it's $250?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll accept that amendment.
Second?
Second.
Will you accept that?
Yeah, I'll accept
Okay.
that.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay.
What's the history here, Mike? It seems like a bit of an outlier. There's multiple bays. Do they have signage? Are we looking to put signage on the lake or just St. Germain?
It'll be a road sign.
Yeah.
And I can give just a little background. So George St. Germain was a person that served on the board forever. I mean, just 4 years, 40 years. And so some time ago, the board talked about this and it decided that it would be nice to honor him in some way. And so that's what prompted the sign.
So on top of that, his great-grandfather, after the Civil War, came back and bought all that land over there in Delwood, and they used to run outfitters. So people from St. Paul would drive the streetcars up, and they'd go rent their rowboats out at St. Germain's Bay and go out. And they had there's still a couple of little cabins back in there. But they would rent cabins, and they would do that. And traditionally, that area was just called St. Germain's Bay. And you look around Minnetonka, they kind of had those, and that was sort of the idea of like maybe we need to start promoting, areas of our lake.
So are we going to start putting signage up for the other bays?
I think if
Up to the board.
I think if someone has a suggestion that they should bring it forward. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. Thank you, Mike. Unfinished business, Commercial Bay, that's me. So the first item is the VFW expansion EAW. So the board has received an EAW, and so this meeting we're officially accepting that EAW for review, and so now it's incumbent on the board to review the EAW and determine as the LGU if the EAW, if we have any questions about the EAW, I guess. And so we have to review the EAW. And at the moment, I guess what I was thinking is that we could keep the initial review with the executive committee, and then we would bring a report to the July meeting. But I'm open to suggestions if anybody has any alternative approaches to this EAW review.
Did we figure out if we even needed to do it? I thought there was a math problem where we were trying to figure that out. We were going to go to the DNR. Did we figure out did we even need to do it, or what was the deal?
Alan?
Chair and board, I did reach out to the DNR and asked, what is that trigger? And so it's, if you recall the diagram, there's actually the expansion itself, which just is sort of a self-contained slips and docks. And the language in the rule that governs the decision actually talks about navigation area or maneuverability area. So that obviously is a little bit bigger than the dock. And based on the two boxes that we drew, basically, using that larger number did trigger the EAW, which is why the worksheet's now submitted to you. So it was a shall, not a should.
Yeah. And if you want additional information, it's in the May meeting minutes.
Yeah. What's the timeline on this? Is this for next year's installation?
So, well, just the way that I see things playing out. So the VFW has provided an EAW. The board needs to review and act on the EAW. If the result of the board's review of the EAW is that it's acceptable to us, then we would notify the DNR because the VFW has made an application to the DNR for a revised permit. And so once we finish our work on the EAW and advise the DNR of that, then the DNR would do their work on the revised permit. And considering how the time it takes for a revised DNR permit to be put together, unlikely that would happen this year.
Right. But it's okay for us, our timeline, to do this and approve it in July.
Yeah, for our timeline, I think, because we don't really have any
As far as I know. I mean, you guys are now the gatekeepers, so, if this was a much bigger project with a lot of these questions answered more dramatically than not applicable, you might then ask for an EIS, basically a study. What's the true effect of this, since the worksheet indicates that there should be more? But in this case, it's just a small expansion of a small marina in a small lake, and so as you read the worksheet, you can see that it's really it's an exercise, basically. So you receive it, you accept it, and then you tell the DNR, this is good enough for our purposes, basically.
Okay, so the executive committee will bring this item back to the July meeting for further discussion.
And review and approval and
hopefully
acceptance.
a vote. Any other questions on this at the moment? Yeah, Luke?
Just a small comment. Mr. Chair, Board, Luke Mishad, 2601 South Shore Boulevard. On behalf of the VFW, one of the questions that I received from staff was, and a member of the board, was a little bit about slip counts. And the past permit of the VFW listed, I believe it was 4 slips as transient slips. And much to my surprise, we don't charge for transient slips or count them, I guess. The permit application for the VFW that or the diagram that we've sent you a slip is a slip. A slip is not a rental pontoon. A slip is not a transient slip. A slip is a slip is how it's been drawn out. Because a slip is a slip. I mean, they're taking up that space in the lake. And so they'll continue, obviously, to provide transient slips for their customers. They currently provide the slip for the sheriff's boat. And within their ADUA, the city, I guess, has decided that the going fishing boat is going to be parked in their ADUA as well now, that I just found out about, or I'm just now seeing. So, but their request is for 42 slips. They're in that mix are transient slips. They'll continue to donate the slip to the sheriff, and they will not exceed the 300-foot allowed by the ordinance number 5 of the district.
Okay, any additional discussion on the VFW EAW? Okay, we'll move on. Docks of White Bear Lake and City of White Bear Lake Lions Park ADUA boundary agreement starting 2024. My understanding is that the city and Docks of White Bear Lake have reached an agreement that will come into effect with the dock installation in 2024. Okay. Any discussion about that?
Yeah, I just on that note, as long as, just to say we're looking at both sides of it, as I look at the permit for VFW, I'm glad the city made the decision they did, because the VFW also on the north side, all those boats have to go in and out of Veterans Park, ADUA, to get in and out of their slips. So I'm really glad the city has made parity on both sides of the marina.
Okay, any other discussion?
What action do we have to take because of this? Have we approved the permit, right? Is that on the LUC agenda?
What we did last for the boundary between Docks of White Bear and Lions Park, is that what you're asking about, Scott?
Yeah, well, we had all this discussions,
right,
but they were essentially at that point not operating legally.
True.
Okay, so do we then bless some agreement and
so the board at our May meeting defined where that ADUA line should be, and we left it. We gave the two parties 10 days to come to some agreement. My understanding is they ended up agreeing on that line that we had approved, and so there's no further action for the board on that item other than to enforce the new ADUA line. That's what I think. That sounds right. All right.
So is it our understanding that the docks will stay as they are this year?
So that item actually is on the LUC's agenda, so we'll be getting to that.
Okay.
Okay, any further discussion on that ADUA boundary? Okay.
I'll just make a comment.
There you go.
Does the board, is there any reason to put some teeth into this? Obviously, we have a history here of issues. So, yes, they have an agreement for 2024. If it's not followed, what? Are we just going to send a letter in June, follow up in July? Next thing we know, it's September, and we have another year of noncompliance. So, I don't know what everyone's feelings are, but just figure I'd throw that out there because we have a good history of noncompliance and issues. Do we want to do something about it or just go as we typically do?
Well, I think that Sherry.
I have to go back into my notes or emails, but I believe the city was waiting to get like an official agreement between the two of them, the lawyers. So they have a document that states what's just on the diagram.
I think this is pertaining to me. Maybe this would be a good time to introduce myself. I'm Mike McGoldrick. I'm a partner of Docks White Bear Lake.
Please come up and speak to us, Mike.
Yes, Mike McGoldrick, 4911 Moorhead Avenue, White Bear Lake. So as far as the ADUA lines go, we were able to make an agreement with the city of White Bear Lake. This could be a non-issue depending on what happens, but because there's so much unknown back in May when we made that agreement, we asked if it was all right if we were in their ADUA for the rest of the season as we try to work through everything. So at that point they agreed. We have email exchanges, and they agreed, yes, all right, so this ADUA line will start in 2024. Whether or not we are going to be in that space or not is, I guess, still to be determined. We had a conversation last hour about it. So anyway, and then I suppose to your point, Darren, I understand that there's been some difficulties working with Docks White Bear Lake in the past. So I am now a partner in the succession plan for Docks White Bear Lake, and I'm really hoping that we can all get off on a fresh foot, or fresh start, I should say. As I would be the direct one to communicate with going forward in regards to the ADUA. So I hope that you at least put some faith in me, at least to start, and not, I suppose, remember of your past dealings with Docks White Bear Lake and give me an opportunity to earn your trust. Thanks.
So our expectation is that the permits that are filed this October will meet this agreement.
True. The permit applications that come in October.
So as far as the agreement goes, that's our next point. Recommendation is that we get a permit that fits the agreement in October.
True.
Question regarding those permits. Are there going to be, how many boats are there going to be?
And are you asking specifically about Docks of White Bear Lake?
Yes.
That's not part of the ADUA line agreement.
Okay.
But the LUC committee report will discuss the amended application that's been submitted by Docks White Bear Lake. Okay. So we can have that discussion then maybe.
Okay.
Any further discussion about the ADUA line? Okay, here we go. We'll move on. Next item on the agenda, E.G. Rudd and Sons Survey Services. So E.G. Rudd, the survey firm that we've hired, they went back out and they basically resurveyed Commercial Bay and provided updated diagrams that are in our packet. I think basically the findings, everybody's okay except Docks of White Bear Lake. Docks of White Bear Lake seems to be well over the 300 feet from the ordinary high water level with almost all their docks. And I'm sure everybody saw those figures. And they, we asked them to put in a second point at that intersection of Docks White Bear Lake, Lions Park. And they did put in something, but it sounds like there wasn't much room, so it's not maybe super effective. But we have the survey firm that we can rely on annually if we want to come out and survey that again. And in addition, once we get everything set, then hopefully, a person could just go out there with a measuring wheel and determine if the lengths of the docks are appropriate and that kind of thing once we get everything settled.
So this is the first I've heard of this. I guess is there any decisions been? And I apologize if I missed it in the packet, but is there any action going to be taken, or a letter, or what?
Well, we plan to, or maybe we did, advise the DNR, Dan Skolin, of this. And we also let them know. We let them know that. Did that letter go out yet? Or today it went out. So we let the DNR know. Depending on, I think, what happens with the amended permit application during the LUC discussion, will determine next steps for the board. Okay, any additional questions on that? Okay, we'll move on. And then approval of the last payment. And this $1,000 invoice, Sherry, is that for the coordinates conversion and the remeasure?
That is the last payment of the contract we had.
Perfect.
Yeah, so, and that's, we wrote a check for that.
Okay. And so that we'll approve that on the treasurer's report.
Yes, and then going forward, when we're finished talking about E.G. Rudd and Sons, I assume we are done with their services for the year, except for those additional things that we asked them to do, so we should ask them for a final invoice.
Right, and that's the work that we approved up to $2,000 at the May meeting. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Can I add two things here?
Please.
So at the beginning, there's an ADUA marker locations. There was a survey that was done, and they actually placed the markers, and so you received that. If you're interested in going for a walk to see where they are or what it looks like, Diane and I are going to go out and look at them just to see where they are. And then also converting to GPS coordinates. So there's a .klm extension that they sent me that you can upload into Google Earth, and it works, and it puts those positions there. I just don't know how to see the coordinates. So if someone is interested in trying that themselves, they can do that. Also, we don't know if it works on a GPS handheld unit. We do know it works with Google Earth. So
can you send that around?
I can, if that's okay to everybody. Okay. And then let me know how you do it. So that's it.
Okay. Then next item on the agenda, 2024 draft application form 5, watercraft storage fees update. Mark?
We're still looking at Form 5. We've got a couple people assigned now to go through it. As far as the watercraft storage fees update, if I remember right, the last thing we talked about was this wasn't about watercraft storage on the lake. It was watercraft storage off the lake. And I think there was a lot of differing opinions on that. We never came to, yes, we're going to count everything at Bel Air Beach, everything at Matamidi Beach, everything at Chautauqua, everything at Optimus Beach, everything at, it's on shore. And I know you are well with my opinion is that if the cities want to put canoes and kayak racks on shore, that I really don't want to be involved in counting them. And if we do count them, why?
So are you bringing Form 5 to the board for approval tonight?
Not tonight. No, we just assigned a new committee to kind of go through it. Okay. We want to get it done before August so that in September they can go out and everything can be confirmed and affirmed.
Yeah. Well, I'll just speak to the why, and it's something that we've discussed at previous board meetings, is having some idea of the number of watercraft I think could be valuable to the board, both from future lake studies or just general knowledge about how many canoes, kayaks are around the lake that way. As far as the fee, personally, I don't care if we charge for them or not, but I think having the people that are completing the applications note for us that information, I think, is valuable, and I don't think it's onerous to ask them to do that.
So if a city beach doesn't have any boats docked on it, now the cities have to tell us how many canoe racks they have on their beaches?
No, I think it would just be for the multi-use dock permit and the commercial permit, correct?
I
To
think-
understand those counts.
That's what I think. But, Mike, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, you know, when you talk about on-lake and off-lake storage, it's on a lake lot, so it's not really off-lake. It's on-lake. But I found 18 more boats at Lions Park. On the other corner, they've got 3 storage racks of 6 each. So there's 226 storage racks that I found just from just one trip around the lake that you don't want that we're not counting or that we're not paying attention to, and whether we charge for them or not is a whole different thing. But they all have a right to use the lake just like any other boat, just like any other place. When they're on the water, they've got the same rights as anything else, and they're storing them on a lakeshore lot, and so I just feel they should be counted. After that,
But you got to remember, our forms are only for multi-use dock and commercial sites, right?
Yeah.
We don't have a separate
we don't have
permit for site. Like, if somebody has a rack that they don't have a dock, are we wanting them to fill out a different form for that? Because then we have
rack on
those-
private property,
Huh?
rack on private property.
Yeah.
No.
Well, like Bel Air Beach, there's
a
no
whole different
form
thing.
to tell the city that, or the township that, oh, by the way, you have canoe racks at Bel Air Beach. You guys have to put in, we don't even have an application for that.
If there are racks at Bel Air Beach, I didn't see them.
Well,
But I guess-
Matamidi Beach.
And I was just trying to get clarification. I think we could put it in our permits for sure, so we can collect the data. I think we start with that. I don't think we're going to get other areas that don't have a multi-use dock or a commercial site to give us a form to fill out because we just don't have that right
Yeah,
now.
I mean, it's just over 200 watercraft
We
that.
just don't even have a permit for somebody who's not one of those two things right now.
I think that there's a workaround for that, though. I think that if we can get the commercial docks, multi-user docks, to give us that information, as a fill-in point on the application, and we can start summarizing or gathering the locations of the others, then it would always be an option to have Sherry reach out to White Bear Township and ask them how many canoe.
Municipalities at least.
Yeah, right.
Something like that.
Right, so that we could start gathering that information, and we could keep that information ourselves. So at least we have it, and they don't have to fill out a form. I think it could be an email to, we'll use White Bear Township again. Yeah, saying, hey, can you just let us know how many racks you
Yeah,
have?
let's start with Form 5, get that updated, and we'll bring it, that's what we're trying to wrap up for July. Then we can add that in as just a count, we'll say no fee, whatever, and we'll start with that is that fair?
Mike?
Yeah, and we're beginning a lake use study, and that would be part of it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we say, oh, here's 200 boats. Well, what are you going to do with those?
Yeah. Well, there's an old saying, I learned in one of my classes once, GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. The last 5 times I've been, keep my boat on Matamidi Beach, I haven't seen one of those canoes used off the racks, but all the neighbors are hauling their canoes and kayaks down in dollies and launching them in the non-motorized launch.
Because they couldn't get a rack to rent.
Right. Or they live a block away and they don't care.
Whether somebody uses their boat or not is not our problem.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of baffled, to say the least. I mean, we've always said we deal with the water. This has nothing to do with the water, other than the boats are going into the water eventually. But I guess, do we even have any jurisdiction as far as how many racks or how many boats are there? Or,
that's my why.
That's not water. It's
Yeah, and I think from my perspective anyway, it's a concentration of boats. Here on these racks. And we may not have jurisdiction over them, but gathering the information seems to be prudent, to me anyway. Especially when it's simple.
Part of our lake assessment, yeah, that information's interesting in terms of what we have jurisdiction over. If you look at our ordinances, for example, we talk about, okay, you can't have more than 4 boats on the dock. And then it says, including boats that have been pulled up on shore. but not necessarily stored on private property back from the lake. There's nothing in our ordinances that defines that as being a boat, as we define boat, that we're concerned about. You know, if you've got a rowboat and if you've got four boats on your dock and you have a fifth rowboat that's pulled up on the shore, we talk about that.
I think we got that.
But I don't see anything in our ordinances that talk about, you know, a canoe rack, you know, 10 feet back from the shore.
Sure. And again, I don't think that it's necessarily a jurisdiction item. I think it's more of a data gathering. Chris, did you have anything?
I think we got the feedback that we needed. Oh, sorry. I think we got the feedback that we needed. We'll get the permit together, and then we can review it in July and get some comments and see what you guys think. I think that's the best route to go.
Okay, any other discussion on this? Okay, thank you, LUC, for taking care of that. Okay, on to executive committee. So that's me. So the executive committee met, and I'll just run down some of the things we talked about, although they're kind of interspersed in our agenda. We discussed the ADUA boundary between Docks of White Bear Lake and Lions Park. We discussed confirming compliance with permits in Commercial Bay. We did discuss businesses operating on White Bear Lake, and that was also something that was discussed at the LUC. And you know, basically, it's that we don't really have jurisdiction over what happens on land, and so you know, there wasn't really much resolution in our discussion.
Alan and I talked off I think what Alan's suggesting is that we still charge any of these folks that $125 fee if they are renting, whether they're onshore or not. I think that's what his suggestion would be on that, right?
Okay.
So something to look at. I think if it keeps going, I think that's what we do. Charge them the $125, make it, at least you can track them and you get a fee out of it.
Most good, it's commercial.
Yeah.
So it's just keeping an eye, and the administration just to keep an eye is worth the $125 just for sure.
Okay, any further discussion on that item? Okay, I'll move on. We discussed the lake use study. Sure.
I'm sorry, this came out of a discussion of an operation that's working on White Bear Lake right now, Wheezy's Water Rental. Should I reach out to them then? Because I said that we probably we couldn't offer them a permit because there was no place for them to operate out of, but it sounds like they can really just operate anywhere except for out of Matoska. So should I reach out to them that they should fill out a permit?
I don't know.
Get through one thing and another.
Or just wait until we see that they're back on the lake again?
Well, I think that if the position of the board is that we are going to charge the fee and require an application, then yes, then we need to do that.
Okay.
And I guess maybe this. Okay, we do the fee for the like knowing who they are and as a commercial, but is there city ordinances like Matoska Park? It's basically private, right? So the city can do whatever they want there, correct?
Yeah, if you're looking at me, if the city has a doing business in the city ordinance, then obviously if you're going to do business in the city,
Get their permit
you got to
from the
get a
city.
business license from the city.
Yeah.
You know, that's just to sell your widgets in the city of White Bear. So my guess is they're going to want a permit for that.
So they need both. They'll need ours and the city.
Yeah, or just a business license in general. You know, the only thing that makes it relevant here is it's a commercial outfit and they're using the lake to make their money. So at least that'd be how I'd see it anyway. So.
My understanding that the city wasn't going to give out any permits because they didn't want them operating out of Matoska and Ramsey County as well. So they weren't going to get a permit to do business anyway.
They can't operate out of an open space or park, so they were doing that.
So it's a moot point.
I don't know.
Right. But I don't want to personally get gummed up in being the city's hammer and saying, well, if you don't have a permit from the city, then we can't give you one either. Like, I'm fine giving them a permit, and if the city has an issue, let the city go after them. That's their city. Those are their rules.
And what we can't do is guarantee them that just a permit to do business on the water, which is all that would be, is all they need. So we'd say, hey, this is not your carte blanche to go and do what you're doing. It's just for our purposes, you're licensed to operate on the lake.
But to handle the complaint that we got, because we got the complaint, right?
From the city.
From the city.
Yeah.
So why don't we just tell the city, tell them to go get a permit? Okay. Going
Okay.
in circles. I didn't know it was the city.
Yeah.
That was something else.
And they'll do this to us at times and go, you can't do that for them because we don't like it. And you're like, well, then you follow your rules. You don't give them a license.
This is the problem. The city has to give them a tag, right? They have to get a tag to put their boat in the water. They don't have records of people if they gave them a tag or not. They don't keep records on that. They're going to start doing that now. So as a favor, I guess, I reached out to them to help them with that issue.
How about if we, and we don't have to handle it this way, but I'll make the suggestion. How about if we just kind of table this item for this operating season, let the city work on their end of it a little bit, and we can, especially if we're going through our ordinances before next year, we can also see if there's anything that needs to be done in that regard with the ordinances. And then we can try to have a better approach going forward starting next year. And anybody concerned about that approach?
No. I like it.
Sounds good.
Going to relay that to the city so that they know that they have to get their act together.
Sherry will communicate with the city. Thanks, Sherry.
And if Wheezy sends you a check for $125, cash it.
Oops, they don't take their
Okay,
money.
so I'm gonna move on. Okay, we also discussed some treasure items regarding the 2024 budget and the idea of using a credit card with cashback option. And I'm still on the executive committee report, sorry, with cashback option. And we're just looking into options for that. We discussed a map that could be put together that defines where the board typically places shallow water and no wake buoys. And so that's something that we want to firm up a little bit and have available as necessary. We discussed a review of the ordinances. And again, we looked for volunteers, and that's Alex from the LUC, Meredith, and Mark. Thank you again, Mark. And then another item was that the executive committee would like to ask the DNR to allow the conservation district to define what acceptable dock layouts are in low water situations. Currently, the DNR has a provision that if the water level is below 922 in April, that the marina owners are authorized through, at least from the DNR permit perspective, to go to a different dock configuration that extends out. And we would like to ask the DNR should leave that portion, the dock configuration, out and let the White Bear Lake Conservation District Board define the low water level layout of the docks. So our intent is to do that. And then we also discussed the St. Germains Bay sign. Any questions about the executive committee meeting? Okay, we'll move on. Next, Lake Quality Committee, Mike.
Excuse me. Lake level today on the DNR website is 923.18. 923.18. The lake temperature, which has taken about 2.5 feet below the surface, is 77 degrees. Now we're coming into our milfoil assessment period, and quite honestly, there's not a lot of milfoil out there. There's a lot of native weeds that belong there that are growing nicely. I know the milfoil would come because it's down there brooding, waiting for some sunshine, which we're going to get now, and it'll come popping up. McComas had suggested already having done the survey, but I put them off, and probably sometime next week we will do the survey. If anybody would like to come along, they're welcome. Last year, Meredith came along and had the time of her life. And so that will happen sometime, I believe, next week, probably later in the week. So once the survey is put together and all the points are put in electronic form by Steve McComas, then it would go to the DNR, and then it goes to the applicator for an application. In your packet, you have from Lake Management a bid on agents to use. They bid Triclopure, which we've used many, many times over the years. They did not bid 2,4-D because it's hard to get, and apparently the farmers use it a lot, and it's just not as popular as it used to be. They don't think it's doing the job it should. They also threw in a bid that we've seen before for Procelicor, and that is almost 3 times the cost of liquid Triclopure, but in areas of more than 10 acres, which we don't have very many of those, they guarantee it for 3 years. I have a call into the DNR. April is the new person, and to see what other lakes are doing about this, if there's any other agents out there that they approve that we can use, and just get more information on it. Lake Management was very helpful in going through everything that they do, and they find that people like to try Procelicor in some areas and see how good it works. And if they said even in smaller than 10 acres, they found that it really does eliminate it for a number of years, up to 3 years. So something to think about that I'll decide on with the DNR's help, of course, and McComas. So to do the application, it will probably happen shortly after the 4th of July, after the survey is done, before the next board meeting. So I would like to get approval to spend the money for the treatment. Now, in the budget, we have $25,000. Last year, the cost of 32 acres was $19,000. But if we try some Procelicure, it'll be a little bit more than that. We budgeted for $25,000 this year. Plus, I received a grant, or we will receive a grant from the DNR for $6,750. So potentially, that would be an amount to spend of $31,750. Of course, only what's needed to be spent will be spent. But I would like to make a motion for approval to spend up to $31,750 for Eurasian water milfoil treatment this summer.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? And I'll start us off. So, Mike, this Procelicor is, are you considering maybe having that done on some portions of the lake to see how it goes? Is that what you were saying?
If we had a 10-acre spot, I certainly would. I think I might, but that's $16,000 then. So it's like,
right. So once the areas are defined, then you'll be better able to make that decision, I guess.
If we have maybe a 5-acre spot, I might do that.
Got it.
As far as we have a lot of 1 acre, 2 acre, 3 acres little pops there because we've been pounding it every year and keeping it down so we don't have these big islands of weeds. That would be the small ones would be the Triclopure. That would be a good one for them. But if we have a more concentrated area, yeah, I think it would be a good shot at trying this Procelicor.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. Any questions for Mike? Okay, thank you, Mike. Next, Lake Utilization Committee, Mark.
Chair and Board, I'd like to just, I'm not changing the agenda, I'm just changing the order it's in. I'd like to start off with docks of White Bear Lake, if that's possible.
Start with the one that you'd like, Mark.
Yeah, sure. So let's go docks of White Bear Lake. came to the LUC. The city has decided that where they're at right now is good and has approved the diagram for next year. So what the LUC suggests is that we approve this, and in good faith, docks of White Bear Lake will start to trip because there's boats already in those slips. So you're talking about having people come in and move their boats, you know, and schedules and things like that. So in good faith that they would start to align their dock as in the drawing of the application. And as they get that Whitaker ADUA line straightened out down there, then Tallies will amend theirs as well to move their way out, so allowing boat access in and out until things get done. Then next year when it comes in, pray God it's not below 922 elevation in April, that will be the application that's there. That diagram will be no change from last year, and everybody will be content. They seem to be, the city's agreed, as far as I know, Tallies has agreed, and Docks of White Bear Lake has agreed to this. And that's a first. So the utilization committee moved to approve, and I so moved, voted to approve.
How many dock slips are in there?
Scott, just a second.
Sorry.
So we don't have a second on the motion.
Okay, sir.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the application in front of us from Docks of White Bear Lake. Any discussion?
Also, I'll add, the application also asks for 250 boats. The DNR permit says they're allowable is 260. It was brought up in the meeting that the VFW is coming up, and if they want to add 14 boats, you can't say that there's a moratorium on adding boats on the marina and give them 14 and take away 10. That's how I feel, and that's how the committee felt. So we voted. We brought it in with 250 boats.
Okay, well, I'll start the discussion. Just a couple of questions. One is that does this revised configuration that the LUC approved, is that in compliance with the DNR permit? And the reason I ask is, you know, my understanding of the DNR permit is that there are maybe 5 docks that are approved in that.
7 docks in their DNR permit. So it's the one that's from 2019 where they have 7 docks, and 5 of them are at 350, 341, 350, 355, 336, 153, and 78. So it's that, and then it has that amendment for if it's below 922 in April, like you said, the T that they can do.
Got it.
That's what's in their DNR permit.
And if this application, I think there are specific links in the DNR permit as well, and if this application is not in agreement with those links, does that cause us any issues with the DNR?
My opinion is this: if we, from what I understand, we as a board have the final say, even above the DNR, if it's going towards the better. So if we're defining the ADUA lines, we're pulling in docks, we're getting the docks to 300 feet and doing all the right things. I felt we as a board had the final say. Like we're like the permit that's there. You know, I don't think the DNR. We could go get it obviously, but that's time and spin. But I think if we want a permit to move along and get things right, I thought we had the authority to make that call.
Same with Alex.
Alan, would you like to just confirm or adjust that?
Confirm or deny? Yeah, as far as the permit goes, the DNR permit, and you guys have probably heard me say this before, and some of you have said it, you know, that sets your ceiling. And so 260, we cannot, as a board underneath or as a governing unit of government underneath, we'll say the state, we couldn't come in and say 275 is your number, because that exceeds a permit from a higher body. And the same thing would be true of dock length. If they say X, we can't say X plus 5. So we can say X minus 5, but not X plus 5. So as long as we're acting underneath that bubble that the DNR has set as sort of the outer limits, then you're in good shape. And I think the diagrams here do that.
And do we know that they're shorter on all their docks than what the DNR allowed?
Well, the DNR allowed, there's 7 of them there, right? So the first one's 350, the second one's 341, third one's 350, 355, and 336.
And that's on the permit.
That's 5. And then they had 2 additional docks for 7 that were 153 and 78.
So at least for the 5, it sounds like that this application would be less than what the DNR had specified in their permit.
Correct, because we would limit them to 300 past ordinary high water, and they're all over, the first 5 are over 300.
I thought this year was the year that we were going to enforce 300.
We are.
What's happening with the dock that's 350, 41, 50, 55, and 36?
That's the DNR permit, but we're saying
that's what's defined in the
that's what the DNR said they could have, and we're saying they can't.
Ask that one of you speak at a time. Thanks.
Go ahead.
Otherwise, it's hard to hear what you guys are saying.
So are they currently at these dimensions?
No.
No.
Currently at 300 feet?
No. But they have to.
What are they currently
feet.
at?
I think they're a little longer than 300 feet, but we're saying that what the LUC approved was 300 feet, 250 boats at the configuration drawing that they've shown.
So I think they're at the configuration that they've always been, where they're at the 350 or even longer. What we're approving is this diagram in here to conform to our ordinances where it's under 300 feet, and we're saying pull it into 250 slips, and defining the ADUA lines that we defined between the Whitaker line and the city of White Bear and docks of White Bear.
So are we approving them to have their docks exceed 300 feet this year?
No. We're approving the permit to go under 300 feet, this diagram here.
Okay.
Yeah, currently they're operating without a permit, so they're exceeding the 300.
Completely out of.
Mike, did you have anything?
Now, isn't the DNR, now this is for this year you're talking about, isn't the DNR then going to review it for 2024 and follow what we are?
I think we'd want all our commercial bay folks to get it, just like what the city just did with their DNR permit. They'd have to get them all tidied up based on what we're saying is the approved configuration.
But it's going to be before the boating season next year. The DNR will issue a new permit for docks of White Bear.
Hopefully that's the case. I don't know. I mean, I can't really speak to the DNR's timeline. I don't know that we know that.
They did notify us that they wanted our comment and that they were going to review it for 2024.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's.
And we're going to have some.
To tell them what we've got planned so that they can incorporate it into their permit.
And I think if we have something that we agree upon and we can give it to them, I think it's fair to get. Then it's just we have the data define that.
Yeah.
Here's going to be the config. Here's the docs. Here's the numbers, and then we'd ask the commercial bay guys to go get their permit updated.
Scott, did you have any more for you?
Yeah. Now we had talked about when the DNR goes to another permit process, we provide our input to that.
Yep.
And my understanding was from previous discussions is that we would tell the DNR to limit docks of White Bear to 240.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Now by permitting them to have 250, is that our official position going forward?
I think it depends on how the vote goes on the motion.
I would say this 250 is for this year,
Chris.
right? This is my opinion. We're approving this for 250. Because right now also this boundary here, this is just for this year in the sense of letting them go into their ADUA.
The ADUA line between. No, thank you, Mike.
Yeah, hold on.
And I think the ADUA line between docks of White Bear and Line.
So I imagine in the next year with the configuration that's going to come, there's going to be problems here, right? But we're just voting on this year for 250. One, bring it back a little bit. Don't disrupt all the citizens that are in there. Try to get some commonality with it and get a permit where we get some goodness of the 300 feet and get the ADUA lines defined. Because then it comes back into what we've talked about. It's like it kind of gets self-governing by itself once we have those boundaries defined.
Hopefully, eventually. Mike.
You're right. This year the horse is out of the barn. We saw it coming. But next year, if we want 240, then we'll do 240.
Yeah, and I think that's the clear message that we have to give is like 240 will be it next year, if that's going to be it.
A note on the diagram, as I count the spaces, I think about 9 of the spaces would have to actually be outside of the ADU at the ends of the docks.
Mm-hmm. It's possible.
And is that considered and allowed in our 300-foot limit?
I don't think that's the diagram.
Oh, yeah, this is the
That's the
current
diagram.
survey. And no, that's not allowed. But with the revised,
Yeah, if you look at the permit one, they have it like all within the 300 feet, and then
But if you count each of the, 24, 48, the only way to get to those numbers is to put a boat on the distal end, the very end of the dock.
They do that.
So then they're out with that.
Both ends, against the shore and on the end.
So that's going beyond the 300 feet of their ADUA.
it
So-
seems like if their dock goes to the 300 foot and they put a boat on the end of that, then it must be outside of the 300 feet.
Yeah, which would not be allowable.
and maybe the
I mean,
diagram doesn't show that good enough, but they all are,
Well, if you look up right up there, you
That's
can
the
see that there is on
So the goal would, I mean,
four
they-
of those docks.
That's not the one that the LUC
This is the
put up for
current
approval.
situation.
That's,
It's not what's up for approval.
Okay. Well,
Again, even
I
if
guess
it comes
we
down to it, we measure 300 feet.
Chris, just a second. Go ahead, Susie.
I guess we had made it very apparent this year that we were not going to accept anything over 300 feet.
Yeah, and we're still in that position. So like we're
But we're not certain how long their docks actually are either.
right now.
Yes, you said
they're
you
well
weren't.
they're well over 300 feet. They're the existing.
So why aren't we bringing them into compliance is my question.
We need a permit to come into compliance. Like we need to get some. We already issued running a marina without a permit, right? We're trying to get a permit that's defined so we can actually enforce something. We don't have a permit to enforce at this point. We've never approved a permit. This is.
I realize that. They've been operating without a permit this entire year. But we also made it apparent to Brian that the docks were not to exceed 300 feet, and yet they do exceed 300 feet.
Right now. Right.
So,
and so once this goes
when I was a teacher and taught first grade and whatever, when children didn't do what they were supposed to do, there was a consequence. And the consequence here is that we're going to approve his non-compliance and let him have docks that exceed 300 feet.
No, we're trying to approve the permit that is under 300 feet. So we're trying to get a permit for the configuration that they need to go towards.
The current application shows all the docks within 300 feet. Now, whether they really will exist within the 300 feet, we'd have
But
to find
you're
out
saying they
after
don't now exist.
Currently, they don't. That's right. And
So we're allowing them to continue
That's a
their
different-
docks
yeah,
the way they are.
I understand what you're saying, but that's a different issue that we can talk about after. We're trying to figure out, is this the right permit that we want to approve for them to go to that configuration?
Yeah, the motion in the second is to approve the permit in front of us. We're going to vote on it so people will have their say. I'll just to muddy the water a little bit more. Last year we approved docks of White Bear Lake for 240. And based on drone photos from last year, they had 260 at least. And we have an ordinance provision in Ordinance 5, Subdivision 2.1, that we approved a few years ago now. And I'll just read it. Any licensee that exceeds their permitted number of slips will have that number of slips removed from their license for the following 2 seasons. And so if last year they were at 260, we had approved 240, that's 20 excess slips that they installed and operated outside of the permit last year. Mm-hmm. And so if we were following our ordinance, which I would support, then the most we could approve would be 220.
Correct.
And did that come up at the LUC meeting, Chris, at all?
Previous years and counts?
Yeah, that
no, it was
provision.
not on the agenda.
Okay, so the LUC maybe when they made the approval.
But if we're going to do that, we have to fine. We should bring up the data for the past 3 years for every commercial bay. And I think we're going back to the things that we've said we won't do. We shouldn't be picking fights. Like, we're making progress. We're moving forward. If we want to take more boats away from more folks, I get it. I understand what the ordinance is, but we're making progress. Like, we're finally getting things defined. We're finally getting to a point where we'll have something to enforce. We had years to enforce it. We had 3 years to enforce those boat counts, right? I saw the dialogue between the DNR, us, and McGoldrick's, and nobody was talking to each other. So it's just, it feels weird that we would enforce that at this point when we're finally making some progress on these ADUAs and commercial bay, in my opinion.
as long as we're in the discussion.
Mark, just a second. Susie, do you want to finish?
That we're making is it's not complying with our own ordinances.
Yeah, well.
So why do we have ordinances at all if we're not going to?
Under 300 feet in the defined ADUA, that's our ordinance.
For the next year.
No, this is this year. This is for this year's permit.
But you've already said, Chris, that they're not 300 feet.
Yeah, I understand. That's current config. What we're trying to do is vote on a permit for this year so they can conform to it and do it. And we want to hold them to that.
Okay, Mark?
Should this motion be passed, is there a proposal for how compliance will be checked and enforced, and on what timeline?
So go ahead, Mark.
So it's my understanding that the Ramsey County Sheriffs will be doing a random boat count twice a month. So it won't be us. We also have, in the past, we've taken drones and flown over, and I can tell you that if we have to go after one, I know for a fact the city of White Bear Lake was over on their boat count too. And I haven't even looked at the other marinas. So if you're going to do it, you got to go across the board. And we didn't send anything out last year of you were over. So as far as that goes, that's all I'm saying about that. If you're going to do that, then we need to get all those drone photos from last year, count every boat in every marina, and treat everyone the same. Just as if, like I said, VFW has to use Veterans Park to get their boats in and out on the north side. Has to. Cannot operate without using Lions Park ADUA. So we have to be, we can't just be arbitrary.
You agreed that we would have to enforce it across the board. Mark?
So I'll just make the comment that I would support that enforcement of the ordinance that Brian read after the process that we've defined finds any dock over the number and enforce it in the following year's permit.
Yeah. Just have a consistent process that we can follow. It's right. If there's questions, we get it dialed in. I agree with you 100%.
So when the letter is sent out giving them the approved plan, is that going to be included in there that if there are additional boats above and beyond this number, you will be fined next year according to the ordinance that we have?
You know, it's already in the ordinance. It's just up to the board to enforce the ordinance.
I think one thing we talked about, just like sharing the LUC, was we probably should inform Commercial Bay of what are those, things that can happen if you don't abide by these, because like we've talked about, Darren even brought it up in our last meeting, like we want to redo our ordinances, but nobody reads them. So it's like, I think we do reach out and educate a little bit just to make sure folks understand here, if you don't do this, this is what can happen. Right?
So if the letter that Sherry sends out with the permit showed the ordinances and what the consequences are, that would be educating them as to what would happen.
I think it's a start, because I think there's maybe a lack of understanding of the different things like what Brian's bringing up that we can do, right?
And I'll just add that, when we make ordinance changes, and I think I'm right, but you tell me if you disagree, Alan, we have a public hearing to do that. And we would have to go back and check, but I'm almost certain that the Commercial Bay Marina operators were present and were aware when we made the ordinance change. And then the last thing I'll say is back in November, we advised Docks of White Bear Lake that it was 240 slips and they had to be within the 300 feet. They did nothing for December, January, February, March, April, May, and now June. Now we're at our June meeting, and they've come with a revised permit application. And it seems like we're maybe bending over backwards and to accommodate them, and I just wonder about that. And
there's some spin, too, on the ADUAs, right? I do look at that, too, where the city defining that Lions Park one, that was like a curveball. I think what we thought was Whitaker and what they thought was the center of the lake, having the surveys done and having some of that data that really got us to a point to, look at this stuff, I think that helped. But, yeah, there was some spin. I think getting some different management on it, I think it's going to help. I think that probably will put us in the right direction, too.
Yeah, and I'll just add that all the other marinas were successful in getting their applications in time.
Yep.
Meredith?
Okay. So earlier this year, as a couple people mentioned, we sent a letter to the DNR asking them to lower the slip count for Docks White Bear to 240 and to enforce the 300 feet. We also voted, as Brian said, in November for 240 slips. I see what you say about the VFW expansion, but that's a marina expansion, not an annual renewal. We've kept private dock associations to the same counts this year. Like, think about Cottage Park. We wouldn't let them add. And then our last lake study said don't increase the boat counts. I think this is the other issue we're talking about, boat counts. I would like to see all the results from the sheriff's counts maybe at our October meeting if there's time then to look through those and enforce at that time.
This particular subdivision?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, yeah, and I can't understand how we would go more than 240 slips. And I'll just clarify one thing that Meredith said is we didn't ask the DNR to adjust the permit. We just gave them the information, and the DNR made the decision that they would adjust the permit.
But the one thing I was confused, I've always been confused about this one, is the DNR gave out 260, and we've always, like, whatever the years, have always voted 240. But we didn't do anything about the 260 because there was people were disjointed on understanding what that was, it seemed like. Because for 3 years it wasn't enforced. Now, I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but reading through the dialogue between the DNR, us, and the Docks of White Bear, I don't even know, like, let's say we use the 260 on the permit. If we say it's 240, when does that go into effect is that next year? I think it's next year, right?
The DNR, our understanding based on the letter that we received from the DNR is that they would adjust the permit, and that would probably be effective the 2024 operating season, because it takes them time to get that together.
But they were aware, weren't they, in November, that the number was 240?
We advised them on that, yeah. Mike?
It was my understanding that if we had a consistent number, that the DNR would take that number.
Yeah,
which was
after 3 years or whatever.
So that would be 240.
Well, and I think
I think what the confusion was too is, like, each party was thinking two different numbers, right? And I get the dialogue between letters, but it seemed like there was a definite disconnect where one believed in one number compared to the other.
I don't know that I see that confusion, Chris.
That's just my opinion, but I look at it as, like, we're even talking about who has the authority on the lake, which I think it's us, right? So it's like getting more concise on that in the ordinance, where I find the DNR permit is a nice thing to have. It's definitely needed. But I do think we have the power to make some of the decisions above them, right?
Scott?
Yeah, I was just going to say, if the DNR is looking to us for input for revising the permit, what Docks of White Bear is going to do is says, well, here I have a permit for 250. That's what they approved.
Yeah, which sets a really
not 240. And see, that's what's going to happen because they all.
But I think after your 3 years, you do have the ability to put it to 240 now, which it goes into effect already next year, right?
But I think Scott's pointing out the fact that you're setting a precedent by having 250 this year. They're just going to look back and say, we had 250 last year.
Yeah, can I offer a friendly amendment to adjust the permit, the number of slips to 240?
I rescind my motion.
Okay.
Someone can make a new motion.
Excuse me.
Well, I'll make a motion that we deny the permit, that we don't approve the permit, and well, I don't even know if this has to be a motion, but it seems like they know the 240.
Well, let's just vote on it. I'll make a motion, the same motion Brian did, right? That we approve the permit for under 300 feet and for the 250 slips. Let's vote on it.
250?
250.
Okay, so then we need a second.
Second.
Okay, so the same motion.
Same motion.
It's just different. Okay. So any further discussion on that? No. Okay.
I would make one additional point. So it seems like if we pass this, we as a board are kind of viewing this as a variance to some of our operating procedures or past statements. but it does not have any bearing on what the 2024 permit would be approved.
Oh, you get a new permit every year.
Yeah, I will say, though, that I think the point that, I don't know who made it, maybe Susie, that if we approve this, Docks of White Bear Lake, just based on past practice, they will certainly make the DNR aware that the White Bear Lake Conservation District Board approved 250 slips. And I think that for the DNR's work, I think that would confuse the issue for them.
I don't think it will. I think if we can educate the DNR that we're moving towards 240, I think they'll totally understand it. We're already going to tell the DNR that we're going to 240 anyways after the 3 years. That's already been through all the documentation, which takes in effect next year, right?
Yeah, and I don't know how the DNR will react personally with the information.
Right, but they've already approved 260. So us going to 250, I'm not sure what they would say.
That's right. If they would say, well, is it 240 or 250? And okay. Anyway, any further discussion? Otherwise, I'll.
One further point. I think an advantage of approving this motion would be that we could start the enforcement of compliance process because there would be a permit to enforce.
Well, they're already
Chris,
okay,
just a second.
And to my count, I'm guessing there are at least 280 boats based on the extra slips beyond 300 feet that are there. And I would imagine that the sheriff's interns could walk in and start counting and create a nonconformance note at that point. And I think it's time to move on to some sort of enforcement action if we're not going to enforce the lack of permit.
Well, and there is an avenue for enforcement. They're operating without a permit, and they've been operating without a permit all season. And so we can ask the Ramsey County Sheriff's Department to enforce our provision for us, and we'll do that, or we can do that. So I think there is enforcement available right now. I think, again, what the Docks of White, in my opinion, what Docks of White Bear Lake, what they're doing is we've told them 240 and 300 feet back in November, and they're making a business decision to try to get 250. And they're taking a risk that because they know that in the past, we've told them as a board 240 slips and 300 feet.
And we've done nothing to enforce that when they've not done what they're supposed to.
Right, and there was some.
Or any other marine operator.
There was some.
Commercial day.
There was a little bit of difficulty that we had coordinating with the Ramsey County Sheriff's Department, but that's been resolved. So now we can start enforcing. So there will be enforcement, I guess, regardless of whether this permit is approved or not. Okay, so Diane, yeah, sorry.
So this drawing, just so I understand, is not what the marina looks like right now.
Correct. That's what it looks like now.
Okay. And will this be what they're saying they're going to do in the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks? They're going to change the configuration so it does look like this?
That question was asked at the LUC, and no real commitment. The response to the question was lots of boats in the marina, lots of coordinating to do. And so I don't think that the LUC set a time frame.
We did not set a time frame. We just said as soon as possible. So it's
there's
like if we can get some progress, that's what we were hoping for.
I'm told to speak. I've been here for 2.5 hours just to watch. I can't speak on Docks of White Bear Lake at all.
You raised your points at the LUC. Does anybody have any questions for this gentleman who's a part owner, I guess, of the Docks of White Bear Lake now?
I guess, what do you have a big concern? Can we hear the concern, I guess? Is that fine?
Yeah.
If anybody on the board has a question, then yeah, we can ask.
I would just like to understand what the concerns are, or are you just going to pitch to the same things that we're discussing about? I think to me, it's like we put it to a vote.
I'd like to ask him if he intends to change the 350-foot dock to a 300-foot dock.
Yeah, Mike, come on up then, if there are questions from the board.
Mike McGoldrick, 4911 Moorhead. And yes, I would have every intent on doing that. All I want to say is that, yes, I'm coming in at the 11th hour, and I know there's a lot of frustration and a lot of emotions of what's going on. And I do believe this could have all been resolved in October with the plan that we're set forth, but we are where we are now. And this is where I'm stepping in, and I'm trying to make whatever amends I can. Been working with Tallies, been working with Brian, been working with the owners of the shopping center, been working with the city of White Bear Lake, really trying to come to a resolution. And I worked very hard on putting together that diagram, and I really believe that this is somewhere where we can all meet in the middle. And it takes a lot of parties to do that. And I understand our DNR permit is for 260, and you all have voted on 240 prior. And I believe this is a way for us to work in the middle so I can cause the least amount of disruption to the community as possible as we work towards this. I really am here to try to provide a solution and work towards that. And moving forward, I think you guys are going to find that I'll be much more prompt as a manager of Docks of White Bear Lake in doing this moving forward. But I'm open to any suggestions you have or any way that you want to audit my work. I think in the LUC meeting, the first priority was establishing room for Tallies, which I don't believe has been discussed yet, but is your next item in the agenda. So I would work on piecework on what you all believe should be our number one priority. And it seemed like making way for Tallies to move their docks was the first priority. But it will take time, and it will take it by pieces. But I'm open to suggestions. I'm open to auditing my works as I send emails out to our slip owners and anything that any suggestions you have.
Mike, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So if you were looking for resolution on this item and you knew that the board in November advised you that 240 slips was the maximum, why did you come in with 250?
We came in with 250 because we are the operators, Docks White Bear Lake. The shopping centers is the owners. It's our job to try to meet in the middle or come up with a resolution. So again, we believe with 260, which we have been approved at by the DNR, and in 2019 the board approved 250, and there has been confusion in the years prior. And again, I apologize as I have not been a part of Docks of White Bear Lake up until about a month ago. But this is something that was approved by the DNR. It was approved by this own board in 2019, and it seems like there's been a lot of confusion from the emails that I read in the past couple of years on what that meant. And I think that's what, there's no excuses to why this was only sent today. It should have been done in October. I agree with that. But the 250 is our way, hopefully, to meet in the middle and something that you've approved in the past, in between what you guys approved in November and what the DNR approved. And to be honest, it's really for to again try to cause the least amount of disruption. We currently have 250 slips with owners. I'd rather not have to refund these people. I understand if we have to do that, then we have to do that. But these are people who just want to enjoy the lake. And it's just community members. And when I speak to them on the phone, they're very, very excited to be renewing and to be coming in. And we are in June. So at this point, that's why we want to avoid disrupting as much as possible and meet you guys in the middle and hope that we can improve that as we work towards next year to come up with a new plan.
Would it be possible for you to go to 240 slips?
I'm sorry?
Would it be possible for you to go to 240 slips?
I mean, we would have to offer refunds and kick people out, essentially, have them remove their boat from the water.
So it's possible, I guess.
I mean, yeah, if anything's possible.
Okay. Any other questions?
Mike, you made the statement that it was your job to do something between what the DNR said and what we said. But on White Bear Lake, the White Bear Conservation District has the final say. So really, your job was to stick to the 240, not to offer the 250. So, unfortunately, or whomever, it might not have been you at that time, it might have been someone else, but that extra 10 was rented out. And it's not to interpret what the White Bear Conservation District is saying. It's to do what the White Bear Conservation is doing, or has said.
Yeah, we are coming here today to ask for the 250.
Any other questions for Mike? Mike?
How many pontoon rentals do you have?
We have 5.
Okay, and that's counted in the total?
Yes.
Mark?
And just to have you confirm, there are 250 boats in the marina today, so you'd be in compliance as soon as the permit, if this were to be...
Correct. We are. We're likely a bit under. And another comment I'd like to make too, we do have transient slips, and I think there's been some confusion around that. So we do offer public parking for MLDs, which is not a part of that number, but we can stop. We can remove that, not allow the parking. I think currently we have 4 spots open towards the beginning, and we don't have contracts for that. But people do just come and tie up. They tie up in other people's slips. They tie up in those slips. But I mean, we were walking the docks today, and there's not 250 boats there. We don't have contracts for over 250 boats.
And one thing I'll just mention is that if this permit is approved, it'll take a while for them to come into compliance because they exceed the 300 feet, and so they would still be in violation of their permit if we approve it tonight. And so that's an enforceable action, I guess. And, considering at least what I'm hearing, and Mike, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Do you think it's a week that the adjustment would be made?
No. I tried to get a few people to move their boats.
Colin Dunn. I'm sorry.
No, I don't. It's something that I'll take immediate action on. And again, I'm happy to share it or even come up with a plan. It's going to have to be piecework and based off the priorities. But if you approve us at 240 tonight, it's the same problem. I'm going to have to start immediately, and I'm going to have to start reaching out. The 250 for this year, though, would cause the least amount of disruption to people who want to enjoy the lake. But like I said earlier this year, even 2 people parked in the wrong slips. It took me almost 3 weeks to get that sorted. And I like to think I'm somebody who's a good communicator and very prompt. But I'm dealing with, I don't have control over what they're doing. I tried very hard. I got my kids' soccer game, and then they come in and they're moving boats, and I try to go out there to meet them. It's a challenge, and I understand the frustration you all must have. I do, because had I been given this role in October, I think we would have had plenty of time to get this all sorted, and so I get that frustration. But the short answer is no, I don't think it'll take a week. I do think it'll take longer, whether it's 250, 240, 200, but I will be working on it immediately. And I'm happy to take any suggestions that you guys have. But
so it might not happen this year, is what you're saying?
No, I wouldn't say that. It's out of my control, right? I can send out the emails tomorrow, and I can put deadlines. But at the end of the day, I'm relying on other people who I don't have control of to do these things. And I don't want to get off on the wrong foot with you all. I really don't. So setting the wrong expectation, saying, yes, Brian, we'll get it done in a week. And then, it doesn't go my way. People don't listen to me. And then I face you guys next month. I understand where we're at. I'm a solutions-oriented person, and I do want to make this right. So it can be a check the box and everybody's happy. So I'm rambling. Excuse me.
Any additional questions for Mike? Mike?
You said you had more than 250 under contract?
No, we have probably just shy of 250.
Okay. And then do you have any personal boats there that aren't necessarily under contract but use slips there?
No. The 5 of our pontoon rentals are under contract. The Admiral is, but it will not be launched this year. So I think that's why it puts us right under.
Alan?
the office for, is it my boat, someone's boat?
They pay for that. That is a contract.
Is that a slip then?
I assume from what I heard in the LUC, and again, this goes back to some of the confusion around what's a transient, what's not. That boat does not move. It doesn't have a motor. However, we still are counting it as part of the 250. It sounds like in other cases in the past, again, I don't have a good reference, but that hasn't been deemed a slip. We are counting that as the slip, and your boat club does pay for that slip.
Just curious.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any additional discussion?
I don't have any questions. Just a discussion point is.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Yeah, the reality is nothing's going to happen this year. I mean, we've been dealing with 4955 Lake Avenue for 15 months. Hopefully this doesn't draw out over 15 months, but to get people to move their boats and take them off the lake middle of the year, they're going to go silent quickly. So I don't know if we can put teeth into it. I haven't seen this board do that before. So 240, 250, 300, we can approve whatever that we want. If we aren't going to do anything about it, I guess
Well, and I think
they can do what they want, right?
Yeah, and I think historically, unfortunately, the board has relied on the goodwill of the marina operators.
Right.
When we've told them, hey, we'll give you a permit, but it's contingent on you putting in 240, and then they put in 260. And it's just, I think, a realization, at least for me anyway, that that's not going to work. We've asked, we've asked some dock owners or applicants, it's contingent on this, you need to provide that, and then we don't see it. So that's just a problem. And to your point, then the summer goes on, and okay, we'll deal with it next year. But I don't think we should deal with it next year anymore. I mean, it's been very clear, as far as I'm concerned, that 240 slips was the amount. They could have, Docks of White Bear could have made an application for 240 slips, and they would have, and that would have expedited their progress. They made a business decision to not do that, to rent out more slips than they knew the board would approve, or at least that we told them we would approve back in November. And that's a business decision, and it's unfortunate that they would have to give back refunds and that people would have to move their boats, but that's not really a board issue. All right, that's a business
but I do think
owner.
that the board issue is we're finally making progress, and we can't throw that away. I'm not saying it's a bad, this is like we're going in the step in the right direction. I truly do believe that.
Yeah, and I think that it's, from my perspective, I think that it's not an either or. I think the board can make progress, and I think we will make progress with 240 slips. I don't think the board needs to approve 250 slips to make progress, personally.
Sure.
No, and I don't see how, at the end of the LUC meeting, it was brought up that there were 6 homes on the lake that had 5 boats on them, rather than the 4 that are dictated by our ordinances. How can we, in all good conscience, go after those 6 homeowners, or however many it was, and say, you can only have 4 boats, but we're going to let an operator on the lake go ahead and have...
They can have more than 4 boats. They just have to apply for it.
They have to apply for a permit,
So
and they haven't done that.
Like, we've gone back to our thing that we've talked about.
Nor have
We're
they.
not searching for problems. Like, if there's a formal complaint, we'll address the complaint. That's for the that's.
But what I'm saying is, and you've been saying we have to be equitable to everybody. So if we're not going to enforce the 240 that was under our ordinance that we had, or not on the ordinance, but under the permit that we were willing to give to them, we have no business going after anybody else.
I agree. But wait.
So I'm going to have 6 boats on my dock.
Anyway.
I mean, it's not going to be enforced.
Okay, well, let's at least move forward to a vote and see. Mike?
Hear the motion again? Motion to approve the submitted permit for Docks of White Bear for 250 slips in all docks under 300 feet.
Okay, and any more?
Would like to propose an amendment that there be a 45-day grace period on enforcement to that permit.
It's your amendment.
Sure. I'd add it.
On the dock layout and number count.
Yeah, to bring it into compliance with the permit that that's on the table at the moment.
Well, just what's here defined.
Yep.
250 and 300 feet. Yep. I'd add that.
Is the seconder okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, well, I'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Aye. Okay, well, let's do a hand count. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. All those opposed to the motion, raise your hand. Okay, so the motion doesn't pass. And I guess what I'd advise you, Mike, is if you can come back in July with a
action over progress
permit or with an application at 240 slips, that'd be great. All right, thank you, guys.
It didn't pass.
I just want to make one note. I think it's going to be up on the next one, and this is out of my control. I know Chris worked really hard about the tallies line. Brian was adamant, and we put this in our email, that it was conditional on approval of our permit. So this isn't me, I guarantee you. Docks White Bear Lake will no longer be okay with the tallies one. And
that progress out the window.
You just gave them 30 days to do nothing.
Right. It's so bad. Like,
Yeah, we're keeping you in.
I'll make a motion that well, the problem is if we make a motion for 240 slips to provide a permit with 240 slips within 300 feet, what happens next? I guess that and we give them 30 days, I think is more reasonable than 45.
well, there's no permit.
30, it's just a moment.
The only thing you enforce is like no permit. There's no that's what you have to enforce first if you're going to go this route.
Well,
you guys get to go enforce the no permit.
And I think that we need an application of 240 slips. I know in the past the board has made these, and with Docks of White Bear, that you've come in and asked for 260, we'll issue a permit and we'll make a contingent on you putting in 240 slips, and then that doesn't happen. We've seen that historically from the drone photos. So I think that what needs to happen is Docks of White Bear Lake needs to be, they need to come in with a permit that we can approve.
Mm-hmm.
Meredith?
I see what you're saying, Brian, but I also think if they see that we passed 240 again tonight, they see that if they brought that back, it would likely be passed.
So we wouldn't be approving
it was an attempt to not disrupt all the citizens.
So
you got to remember, these citizens in this marina are neighbors too. Do you know what this makes us look like? Like we're this magical police that's going to ruin somebody's boat slip. Like we had progress. We had it. We had they'll go fight the ADUA lines. Keith's going to have another headache for another 10 years.
What?
It's all out the window.
All we were approving was what they had already done.
No, you didn't even look at the permit, Susie.
Just a second. And Meredith, will you reinforce that point you just made? Sorry.
I feel like if we make it clear again to them that we will accept 240 slips like we voted on in November, that perhaps they'll give them more impetus to come back with 240 slips again. If we don't give them any direction on where we're thinking, how do they know what to come back with again? Maybe they just come back with exactly what they want, which is
240 next year. We already it's in motion with the DNR to make sure it's 240. After 3 years, we set the number. It's going to be 240. It's all documented. They all got the letters.
I'll make a motion that we send a letter to Docks of White Bear Lake letting them know that 240 slips and 300 feet is something that the board can approve.
Sounds good.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Information they received in November. And I think to be consistent, we should do that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
I'm against it.
Okay. Was there
me? I just put me down as against all of it.
Okay, so that's one nay.
Nay.
Okay, back to the Lake Utilization Committee report. Mark?
Tallies.
Yeah, it's pointless. That's out the window.
Yeah, we thought we had these ADUAs taken care of.
We tried. Sorry to waste your time.
That one's tabled.
That one's tabled. Next one, 4955 Lake Avenue, debris in the lake. Letter will be issued that they have to remove the debris that came. I think it's still from the old dock, but I don't think it's from the new one. The new one's in pretty good shape. But then also a reminder that that has to be removed by October, or we will pay somebody to remove it and charge them.
Okay, so there's no action item on that. That's just an update.
Just a letter going out to remove the debris in the lake.
In 7 to 10 days.
7 to 10 days.
And Alan, can you talk us through what is it? Can we actually do that? Can we actually remove that and bill back to them? And what would that look like?
Well, the request, I'm assuming that it's tied to that address. And so we're somehow magically saying that they created the problem. So it's having junk in your front yard, basically, is what we're telling them. And so if there's no compliance, I would suspect that the sheriff who's going to go clean it up, I guess, if they don't remove it?
The debris.
The debris.
Okay. And were you also talking about the dock, Mark, or not?
That was just a reminder about the dock. But right now we've already said, I think it was in the last meeting where he came to us and said, that's not a permanent dock. And he said, we're going to remove it? He said, yeah, I'll remove it. So if he removes the dock's not the issue right now. The dock is the debris, and a letter is going out to saying he's got 7 to 10 days to remove the debris from the lake.
Is it just this one thing?
As far as I know, yeah.
That's one.
Just the one.
I'll go pick it up.
Oh,
Yeah, just drag it on shore.
drag it on shore and you're done.
Yeah.
Which we've seen before, because the sheriff's gone out and drug floaters, I call them, into shore before. So as long as there's Plan B and the sheriff, they would do it as a public service. So, technically your violation would be failing to abide by an order of the board. So, because we can't just send out our police force and bill it back, or the code enforcement folks like a city would, to go out and mow the lawn or do something like that. So that'd be the violation, and I think that should be in the letter to say it'll be a criminal citation for failure to abide by a board.
Okay.
Because we didn't get billed for anything that the sheriff did when they pulled in any of the other logs that they've found along the way. So.
Yeah, I shouldn't have muddied the two separate issues. One we're not dealing with right now. That's the dock itself. It has to be removed by October. This is just about the debris. We're sending a letter saying, get your crap out of the lake.
Right. And normally a city would say, or we'll do it for you. And I'm just saying that this board doesn't necessarily have an active group going out there doing these things. So, and hopefully they just do it. But like I said, that would be the violation, was just a straight, you didn't do what we asked you to do. We're the government, so here's your citation.
Thank you.
So.
Okay, any other? Okay. And who's putting the letter together?
Me and her. I'll write it. I'll send it to you.
Mark and Sharon?
I've got one already for the same type of thing. It's kind of boilerplate.
Do we need Alan to look at that or not?
I usually do. Yep.
Okay. Sorry, Mark.
All right, we good with that one? And then, let's see, 479 and 483 Lake Avenue, ADUA and watercraft placement issue. And I think, Darren, you were dealing with that one, correct, for the LUC? I've spoken to neither party about this issue.
Yes, I spoke to both parties, I guess.
Sorry.
Yes, I spoke to both parties. I followed up with Susie tonight, and I think she has more information to bring forward about this. It's not a watercraft placement issue. It's a definition of unreasonably and unnecessarily entering an ADUA. So,
yeah, I have a question for you, I guess.
Susie Mahoney, 479 Lake Avenue, Birchwood.
To add, Susie.
Well, Darren asked me if it wasn't, they weren't in compliance. They are in compliance with the order that was given to them, and I think that was in 2017. I can't remember, it's been so many years. But at any rate, what I said last time at the meeting was where their dock is currently placed in the middle of their lot does not allow them enough space without always coming into our ADUA to exit and enter their ADUA.
I don't think that's
true. I think there's like 18 feet, isn't
Did you see the pictures?
Yeah, I did. And they're like from 4 or 5 years ago. So, and they've gotten rid of
They're not
boats. They've
from-
gotten rid of jet skis. They're down to a pontoon, I think,
They have a pontoon. They
on
have.
your side. So I measured 18 feet, right, on that side.
I didn't take.
I think it's like
I didn't
18
take
feet
any
from the
measurements
from the
myself.
shore or from their dock,
I
but
talked to both.
Their extension on their dock is 8 feet off,
yeah, I don't see it.
and then they have 10 feet to get in, and they don't see it. They don't see it that they're within their ADUA because they're not. They're not within their ADUA. They
As long
are
as there's
always.
navigable water.
Will you let her finish? Thank you. Go ahead, Susan.
We are always. They are always going into our ADUA to get in and out, and it's not just a mere 2 feet. It's they start here and go this way, and almost hit the end of our dock half the time when they leave to take their boat out. And with the new rules that we put in the lake are saying to be considerate of your neighbor's ADUA, I don't see that as considerate. I see it as repetitive all the time.
Sure. As long as there's navigable water, I think it's fair. Right.
Pardon me?
Navigable water. So if you got enough spots to go through, nothing says you can't go over into somebody ADUA. As long as there's enough navigable water, that's what our ordinance says that you can have. So even if we put docks that are 5 feet from the line, we could have 10 feet. You could still get in between them. From what I saw from the diagrams and everything I saw, there was plenty of space to get a pontoon in and out.
Then based on that perception, Chris, I should be able to put my dock 10 feet off of my ADUA line, and I can't.
Well, yeah, but that's due to other reasons. That's whatever was done in the courts or.
No, there's nothing in the courts.
Chris, when you were out there, were Susie or Larry around?
I looked at what was there from what the pictures and the diagrams we've seen, and looking at the lake surveys for the county and stuff. It's plenty.
Would it be beneficial if somebody met with you out there?
That would be great.
Anybody from the LUC?
Darren should take it.
I can meet. I think the issue at hand is the definition of what's unreasonable and what's unnecessary to require someone to enter someone else's ADUA to get to wherever they want to go, right? So obviously, Susie thinks it's unreasonable. They probably think it's not unreasonable. I look at it, if you're getting too close to someone else's dock, it's a risk you take. If you hit it, shame on you, and now you have to take care of that. So, I don't want people driving 2 feet from docks, but I don't know if we're in a position to define what's unreasonable, because that's kind of where we're at. What's unreasonable? Is it, how much space do you need to back up your 22-foot pontoon boat, if that's what
Theirs
they have?
isn't 22. Theirs is only 20 or
Okay,
whatever. It's smaller.
Pontoon boat to back up their kayak, whatever. What's unreasonable? So I can go out there, but then it comes down to me defining what's unreasonable. So I would turn back to the board and say, help me define that, because
Does Darren have the
we got
pic-
two parties that one thinks their actions are unreasonable, one probably thinks it's reasonable. So
What did you feel when you were out there and looked at it? Because you went out there and looked at it with the Harrods, right?
at the time, it was. I think that they were acting fine, right?
Yeah.
If they get over and within 2 feet, that's a risk reward they can take driving their boat. Now, if it's unreasonable where they're taking a huge arc and getting within 2 feet, now we say, what do we do with them? What do we do with the people who are fishing up against docks, right? We don't chase them down.
No, and with the fishermen, it's a random thing. They come in by the docks, and that's their privilege. I think, as we pointed out in the Laker this year, that you should be considerate of your neighbor's ADUA, and they are not. And the pictures that I have may be old, but proves that it's over. Some of them are old. Not all of them, Chris, are old.
I'm just going off what I saw there. There are pictures that are 6 or 7 years old.
They don't have dates on them. How could you?
Well, no, because you look at it, there's vegetation there from when the lake was down, and now it's gone.
Okay, just a second, Darren. Darren, as the person that's been out to look at it, do you think there's value in going back out and looking at it with the
I think
Mahones?
I need to go out there and park myself and watch them move their boat in and out, because that's the complaint. So,
And you're not going to
I
see.
mean, I can drive a boat one way, you guys can drive a boat a different way,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it may be depending on the boat driver. I say, okay, Mr. Harrod is in compliance. Mrs. Harrod is not, because she takes, right? Or the child, I don't know. So I'd have to go out there and collect data, observe, and I can report back, I guess.
Are you willing to do that?
You know, I got all weekend. You know, I can go every weekend. You know,
Are you going to
I
be
don't know.
able?
What's the expectation?
Yeah.
Because I got to go there when they're driving in and out,
Meredith?
right?
What are you hoping the board does? We want us to send a letter to drive their pontoon in a certain way, or?
I would like them to move their dock over so that they're not continuously in my ADUA. If they moved it 5 feet to the south, they would have enough space to get in and out.
Other docks in the middle of their lot, right?
Right. But
So
that
then
doesn't
we
mean
go,
there's.
We go pinch it over on K Beach, and we have, like it's like right in the middle. It doesn't make sense to move anything because you'll push the problem over to K Beach instead of there.
And I wonder if having them move their dock would impact their boat driving. You know, I mean, they could still maneuver through your ADUA to get in there.
Well, the hope is that they would then have enough space because, as Chris has said, they are in the middle of their dock, or their lot, and their lot is 36 feet wide. So I'm sorry, my sister's had open heart surgery today, and that's been going on for a while, so I'm sorry.
Do you want to?
I thought it.
It's been brought up.
Sorry. So they have 18 feet on each side, or approximately 16 and a half feet on each side, basically, to get in and out. It doesn't seem like a hardship for them to move over 5 feet. You know, this board has said that we can't even use that 20 feet of our ADUA for any boat trap. We can't put our kayaks there. We can't put anything there. And they use it as it's their ADUA. And it's getting kind of frustrating that they can't just move their dock over and have 13 feet instead of 18 feet, which would not, Chris, impinge on
It's going to the
Key
other side. It
Beach.
has to.
Okay.
No,
You
it
just
wouldn't.
push it to the other side. It's just another problem. All you're doing is pushing it to the other side. So it's like
They're still going to have 13 feet on that side.
It's the middle of the lot. It's fine.
Aaron, are you?
We've kind of transitioned to the dock placement issue. I guess, I don't know. Sherry provided me a lot of documents from this situation historically. I don't know if you want to read them. But,
Oh, I've read all of them. I got
okay.
my own copies.
Do you want me to read them aloud?
That's fine.
No, I don't want that. Thanks. What I'd like here, just a moment, because I'd like to keep the meeting moving. Darren, are you willing to go out and look at it? And do you see any value in that?
I think our answer's right here, but it's just how do we interpret it?
Okay, well, let's, how about we
I
do?
won't read it word for word, but I can summarize it if you want.
Please.
So I guess this is 8/31/2017, written to 483 Lake Avenue. I don't know. Did you write this?
I think I had a hand in it.
This is the file copy that Sherry provided. Basically, it says 483 needs to place their dock in the middle of their lot. And there's pictures here showing eye hooks on their deck, on how they measure that, various stakes. Okay? So, as far as dock placement, according to this...
I said that. Their dock
Yeah.
placement is where it's supposed to be.
Okay.
But their dock placement does not allow for enough space for them to get in and out without going into our ADUA.
Okay. So...
I'm not saying they're doing anything wrong as far as their dock placement. I'm just saying they're entering and exiting in a way, as those pictures I had showed, don't comply with being an ADA user correctly. Do you have anything to add?
What do you want? I mean, I can go sit there and observe. I want to. But...
Well, Brian, don't those pictures that I took count for anything? I mean, I took pictures of them actually entering and exiting, them with their sailboat almost hitting my dock. We've actually had the sheriff out when their son has run into our dock.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
You know, I mean, it's continuously. And yes, some of the pictures, as Chris pointed out, are old. They're maybe 6 years old, but not all of them. And it's not just happened 6 years ago. It's all the time.
This has been a problem since 2017.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It was a problem last week.
Even though
fighting for 20 years.
So there.
Okay, hey, let's do this. Let's do this. Larry, I'll give you.
Very brief.
Please.
The placement in the center would be fine. They could back their pontoon straight out. If they didn't have, at the end of their dock, they have a platform that extends towards our property that they have to go around with their pontoon. If they didn't have that, then they could just go straight out with their pontoon and they would be just fine. So it's not just the placement of the dock, it's having that platform at the end of their dock that they have to go around. So that would be one solution too, is if they could just not have that platform.
Okay. And just from the board's perspective, any other questions for Larry or Susie? Okay, thank you both. Okay, Mark, it's an LUC item. Did the LUC make any recommendations at the meeting?
No, we just heard what you've heard, and I guess if we can get.
Well, what we heard, Darren said what you told us in the LUC, everything was fine and how everything was laid out. That was the feedback we got in the LUC.
Right.
That was exactly what we got. So things have changed since we had the LUC meeting and this conversation, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's do this. LUC, you take it again, and we'll bring it up again at the July meeting.
Because it came up as watercraft placement issue, and it's
something different, maybe.
Something different.
Okay, so on with your report, Mark.
All right. Last is on the agenda is Jensen Rindeblad. That's over in Delwood. And what it is there's to the north is the Browns, then there's the Jensen property. So between the Brown and the Jensen, the easement is 7 feet south of Browns, and then 15 feet is the easement. So what happened was the Jensens, and Chris can expound, the Jensens had a survey done, and it does appear that the easement dock does sort of veer a little off the 15-foot straight into the lake easement. It's not that bad. None of the three parties are talking to each other. So we've asked him to go back and talk to Mr. Jensen, Mr. Rendelaub, to go back and talk to the Jensens and come up with, like, then where do you think it should be? Because he gets it's already been through court. The easement's solid, and 15 feet is enough to put a pontoon boat in. They back it straight in and out. He doesn't have any L's or T's on it. So
yeah, and then the good thing is on that survey that they did lay out the dock where it's not in the ADUA. So Carl, I think, Rindelob didn't have that yet. So one, we're going to get that to it. Two, we're going to help facilitate the conversation between them and the Jensens. Mm-hmm. Browns will hold off. We'll just inform them after the fact, like once we get it dialed in. But I think it's really up to them to figure out, do they act on anything this year? But understanding that here is the survey and this is where the dock needs to go.
So is the next step, is the LUC going to reach out and try to mediate that? Okay, thanks.
yeah, we just got the survey in a week and a half ago.
Yeah, I think it was like
week and a half ago,
something like that.
Any additional LUC items?
I think it was brought up earlier. We had 3 properties that were brought to our attention that have 5 or more boats on them. So we'll do some, well, Sherry's probably going to do most of it, but I have a letter, again, that I'll write. But we have all the addresses and everything, so I'll write a letter, the same one I did last year, and just say, here's the ordinance. You have to remove one of these boats. You have 7 to 10 days, or 10 days to remove it, to come into compliance, or else give us a reason you need to have 5 boats on your dock.
Okay. Any additional LUC items?
No, sir.
Any questions for the LUC? Okay, we'll move on. Lake Education Committee, Scott.
Yeah, we've, in terms of the our educational effort this year, we have worked with the press publications, and they have published the White Bear Laker, and we're quite pleased with what we've been able to accomplish. We'll have to evaluate it further. We'll be getting an invoice from them and some sort of report on distribution, which is key to us, who's seeing this stuff. They are planning, I think, 4 editions this summer. And we have the initial one that had the big article about us and our material that we sent out. We provided additional material for their second edition. And that's about what citizens can do to maintain the water quality of White Bear Lake. It includes things like, use of salt in the winter, etc., keeping your drains cleared, a little bit about the adopted drain program. So that's what we've got in the next one, which should be out real soon. Because I think we had like a June 4th deadline to getting that material in. So we're going to have to keep coming up with additional things that's going to be quite welcome. They're looking for the stuff that'll support their advertising. So we're going to continue with that. We're not going to do Market Fest this year. We really don't have anything, and some of the discussion that we've had is that you really have to up your game a bit to get people into your booth, because we really didn't have much last year to get people into the booth. Like, basically you have to give stuff away or have a big spinning wheel or something that pulls people in. So maybe next year we could do that. And that's about it. Maybe Meredith has something on social media.
And one thing about the White Bear Laker, we're starting to develop content for the August 11th issue. It's going to just be one page that we get. If anyone has any ideas of anything they'd like to see go in that content, email Scott or I or Susie. And then social media for the month is going to be another marsh post, something on lake level and temperature, something on the weed survey, and a link to the Laker material that'll be coming out right before the 4th of July.
Just one comment. I got nothing but praise and great things about the Laker. I think the work that you guys did with Carter was, everybody that who's gotten it or looked at it, they loved it. So very good job.
Thanks.
Yep, nicely done. Any questions for the Lake Education Committee? Okay, moving on. Treasurer's report, Mike.
Yes, the Treasury report was handed out this evening, and you all have it in front of you. And if you have any questions on anything, take a second and look it over. Pretty much our usual business, except for E.G. Rudd is the $1,000 that we talked about earlier. By approving the Treasurer's report, we'll approve that payment. If there's nothing from anybody, I would like to make a motion to pay debit card 7 and checks number 4866 through 4874.
Second. We have motion and a second to pay these items. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes.
Okay, the next thing is the budget. And in the packet that you received. It's at the very end, it's the last thing. And if you've had time to read through it and have questions, please, let's talk about it. One thing on the very last page is the assessment to the communities. And you'll see for next year, you'll see a box that says $26,000. That should read $27,779.68.
Mike, which one is that?
Now, if you go down,
It's in the board packet, not in this packet.
if you go down right underneath that box, you'll see the 2024 community assessments, and you'll see what all of them are. And then you'll see the total down there. That's correct, $27,779. So we're working with different numbers, and we thought we had them all. Any questions on the budget? It's
Basic question?
Yes.
So we're going to run a deficit.
We are going to run a deficit, yes.
And burn down our cash balance.
Yes.
Do we have a goal for when what is our ideal cash balance, and when do we get there?
Our ideal cash balance is 1.5 times our annual budget.
Two. So we have a fund reserve policy that you'll get to find out all about when you do all the review. And yeah, I think that's our cash reserves we're trying to keep between 1 and 2 times our annual budget.
So this budget is a little bit higher than past budgets only because we're looking at the lake use study in 2024. So if we come in around 200,000, we're okay for a budget, for an annual fund balance. And this will certainly put us on the right track very quickly.
Yeah.
So the city's 27.7, income from fees from approved permits, I might add, about 35,700, and then from deficit spending 55,000. Trust me, it all adds up because we've done it so many times over and over. Any questions?
So my quick math on where we'll be at a cash balance at the end of 24, then we're at about 227. We're about halfway through a deficit of 23. So by the end of this year, we'll be at 215.
It's a moving target because we get fees in.
Minus 55. Okay, so not all the fees are in.
We get fees in, we get the city assessments in, and all of a sudden we balloon up to 270 something.
Okay.
And last month I think we were 250, and this month we're 227. 227.
Okay.
And we may go below that, and then we'll start to get some fees in, and so it's a moving target.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
I mean, in terms of cash flow, we're not that detailed, right?
Yeah.
You can only really go by the end of the fiscal/calendar year is really a quiescent point, right? Where you can take a meaningful snapshot. It would probably be good if Sherry could find that policy we wrote a couple of years ago, more than a couple of years ago, and then pass it around so we can understand what it actually says. But in any case, as we approve this budget, which would be approving the assessments on the cities, we should probably write a letter to the cities explaining what we're doing, why it's going up and down, because we're doing them a big favor by doing deficit spending to keep the budget. You know, I think we kind of want to emphasize that, because we don't want to come back next year, oh, it's doubled. Sorry.
Yeah.
You know.
And for most cities, the numbers that you're seeing for the assessments, even the up and down of it, is not a big number.
Yeah, okay.
I might point out, you have to go all the way on the back sheet where it says city's assessments to go over to the last boxes and find the community you live in and see how much each person is responsible for. If you live in Birchwood, responsible for 87 cents each person. White Bear, you're responsible for 53 cents.
Any, so there's not been a motion or anything, we're just having general.
Motion to approve the treasurer's report and send it to the cities.
Second.
We have-
Excuse me, approve the budget for 2024.
There you go.
And send it to the cities.
And we still have a second?
I'll second that
Second?
too.
Okay, motion and second, any discussion?
I had
Meredith?
one question about one budget item that we were talking about last time. Did we find out any more about increasing boat inspection hours? Is it possible? Okay.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. Any questions for Mike? Okay. Okay. Board council report, Alan?
Chair and board, thank you. In chatting with the conservation officer earlier, no one asked what the lake was doing this year, but I do. And so most of what he's been seeing are basically fishing warnings and registration warnings. The lake's been not as busy this year with fisher people, just because it hasn't been a very good fish year, is what I'm hearing from him overall. And so White Bear Lake is suffering from that too, which I'm sure was a consequence of the late spring and, you know, a lot of snow cover that kind of had that effect on the lake. So I think he said the muskie fishing is largely done, and now we move sort of into bass time. I eat fish, I don't catch fish, so I had to take his word for it. So I would expect that more enforcement of that will come up, and he's not really that excited about speeding and wake and things like that. That's really more of a sheriff's patrol issue, so look for that now that we've got 4th of July coming, but I'm glad you indulged him and let him come in and talk to you, though. So seems like a nice guy, and definitely growing up in Vadnais Heights, he understands White Bear and the surrounding area, so probably a good idea to have him. So, and I'd stand for questions.
Alan? Okay, thank you, Alan.
I can, since I have the floor, I don't want to steal Sherry's glory here since it's under announcements, but as much as I'm set up upstairs, I think it's been a pretty long night, and between having to do the final setup and keeping everyone for another half an hour, maybe I'll just drag the stuff back, and we had hoped for a little earlier finish next month before we have to sit for photos.
Thank you.
I just think it's out of respect for everyone on a school night. And like I said, I still have to go up and plug everything and set it up. I thought we'd be done and out of here even with that by now. So unless anyone's really burning to go upstairs and have a photo.
Okay, so we'll push that off. Thanks for your flexibility on that, by the way.
Well, I'm just thinking of you guys, too. I mean, everyone's got better things to do. What? Sure. I have court at 8:30, so yeah, it's the same thing. I'm not doing it out of my own. I just, like I said, to keep everyone and whatever just seems not necessary. So.
Okay, any questions for Alan?
Thanks, board.
Okay, announcements? Chair, you have any announcements?
Just that the next board meeting is on July 18th.
And we're on to item 12, adjournment. Would anybody like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion?
Darren, I second it.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, thank you, everybody. We're adjourned.